Take a look at this house. What happened there that night, though, would be so disturbing, it would result in one of the largest investigations in Japanese history. Here's what's even stranger, though. What happened immediately following the disturbing events that night would be almost weirder than the events themselves, and it would result in an insane amount of evidence being left behind. Yet, despite all of this, to this day, the case is no closer to being solved. This is that horrifying story, and as always, viewer discretion is strongly advised. On the evening of the 26th of July, 2010, police officers and council staff stood in its entrance hall for about an hour, asking the family to let them see the old man who lived there. The family said he was asleep upstairs and did not want visitors. There was a fifth person in that house. He was in a room on the ground floor, immediately off the front door, and he was unalived in November 1978. While the family stood in that hallway saying he was asleep upstairs, they were about 2 meters from him. Before anything else, you need to know how close he was, because everything in this story runs on that. The room was 6 tatami mats. Tatami is how Japanese rooms are still measured, and 6 of them works out at about 10 square meters, or 107 square feet. A small bedroom, in other words. It was on the ground floor and it opened straight off the entrance hall. It was not down a corridor, it was not at the back of the house, and it was not up a staircase. If you came in that front door, that sliding door was on your side of the house before you had finished taking your shoes off. The family living room was on the same floor, past it, which means the route from the front door to the sofa went by that sliding door, and 4 people made that walk at least twice a day for 32 years. You can do the arithmetic if you want to. I would rather you just kept hold of the plain version, which is that nobody in that house could come home without passing him. There were 4 things in that room, and Japanese reporting listed all of them. There was a bed and a blanket over it. There was a portable commode against the wall, the kind you put beside a bed when somebody can no longer get to the toilet on their own. So, at some point before November 1978, this was a room where an old man was being looked after by somebody. That is worth saying out loud, because it does not fit the story his family would tell about it 32 years later. There was a window. Hold on to that one because it matters later. And there was a shogi board. Shogi is Japanese chess, and it is a game for 2 people. Of everything on that police list, the board is the object I cannot get past because somebody used to sit in there with him, and the door was never locked. If this is the kind of hidden Japan you want more of, the version that has nothing to do with temples and cherry blossom, go ahead and subscribe because that is the only thing this channel does. His name was Sogen Kato. He was born on the 22nd of July, 1899, in the Meiji era, when Japan still had an emperor who had been born into a country of samurai. That means he would have turned 111 6 days before the police walked into his bedroom. Since April 2007, he had officially been the oldest registered resident of Adachi Ward. Not the oldest man in Japan, but the oldest person on that ward's books, which in a Tokyo ward of 600,000 people is a small local celebrity position. His records list no occupation. No source states what he did for a living, and rather than invent something for the sake of a smoother sentence, I will leave the blank where it is. What we do know is that from August 1969, he drew the old age welfare pension, which was the payment Japan made to people born before 1930 who had no work pension of their own. It came to about 405,000 yen a year, which was around $4,600. His wife was a former elementary school teacher. She died in August 2004, aged 101. Hold on to her because she matters more to this story than he does. And then there is the room. The family's account, given to police, is that some 30-odd years ago, Kato announced he was going to become a Sokushinbutsu. That word means a living Buddha, and it refers to a real and extremely rare Buddhist practice in which a monk slowly stops eating, then stops drinking, and dies in meditation in a way that leaves the body preserved rather than decayed. There are a handful of them in temples in northern Japan, and people still pray in front of them. According to the granddaughter, he told the family that he would take no water and no food, that he was going into that room, and that they were never to open the door. She said he was a severe man, and that after that nobody opened it. 2 objects in that room date what happened next. There was a newspaper from the 5th of November, 1978, and there was the Adachi Ward Bulletin from the 9th of November, 1978. So the last time anything came into that room from the outside world was the second week of November, 1978. Slow down here, because this is where the family's version and the physical evidence stop agreeing with each other. About 10 days after Kato shut himself in, the son-in-law noticed a smell coming from the room. He told police that. 2 other family members confirmed it. Nobody called anybody. Then, roughly 2 years later, around 1980, the son-in-law opened the door and went in. And this is where the window comes back. He told police that he opened it. And he told them that the body, at that point, looked the same as it did in 2010. Investigators concluded the head may already have been down to bone by then. So the room was entered, once in about 1980 and then not again. There was a smell in 1978 and a body in 1980, and the house went on functioning around it for another 3 decades. Now, what makes a household do that for 32 years? In August 2004, Kato's wife died at 101, and the survivor's pension from her career as a public school teacher started being paid. It went into an account in Sogen Kato's name because as far as every computer in Japan was concerned, Sogen Kato was alive and was her surviving husband. Between October 2004 and June 2010, about 9,450,000 yen went into that account. That is roughly $108,000, and the household drew on it because by then, it was what they lived on. I want to stop on the word arrived, though, because it did not arrive. Somebody applied for it. When his wife died in 2004, an application went in for the survivor's pension in Sogen Kato's name, using his resident record, which existed because nobody had ever filed his death. That is not a family failing to correct a computer. That is a family filling in a form. Over the years, counting everything, something like 18 million yen went through that account, which is around $206,000. According to police, the money went on living expenses, on repairs to the house, and on trading securities. Sit with that combination for a second. The roof over that room was being fixed with the pension of the man inside it. There is more, and the smaller amounts are somehow worse than the large one. In 1990, an application was filed in his name for an Adachi Ward grant that goes to elderly residents, and over the years about 116,000 yen in cash and vouchers came in on it. Then in 2008 and again in 2009, the ward posted him 20,000 yen in gift vouchers under a scheme for healthy residents over 90. They sent it by registered mail. They enclosed a congratulatory letter from the mayor. Somebody in that house signed for those letters. Twice. But the question that actually matters is not why the family did it. It is why nothing in the machinery of a modern state noticed for 32 years. And there is a specific answer. Until 2006, Japanese pension recipients had to file an annual form confirming they were still alive. It was called the Genkyo Todoke, a proof of life notice, and it was exactly what it sounds like. In October 2006, that requirement was scrapped for most recipients because survival was now going to be confirmed automatically through the National Resident Register Network. Which sounds efficient, and it is, right up until you notice what it assumes. The system did not have a way of confirming that somebody was alive. It had a way of confirming that nobody had reported them dead. So if a family simply never files the death notice at the ward office, then nothing anywhere ever fires. There is no trigger. The person stays alive in every database in the country, permanently, by default. Which brings us to 2010 and to a phone call. On the 27th of January, a local volunteer welfare commissioner rang the ward's long-term care insurance section. Volunteer welfare commissioners are ordinary residents who take on an unpaid role keeping an eye on the vulnerable people in their neighborhood. This one said she had not seen the ward's oldest resident for a while and asked somebody to check. That is the whole beginning. One woman on the phone saying she had not seen him lately. On the 4th of February, the ward held an internal meeting about it. On the 15th of February, an official went to the house. The daughter said her father was in bed asleep. The official did not see him. Over the following months, they went 5 times. On the 11th of June, two section heads met the daughter face to face. This time she told them he was alive but was staying with her uncle in Gifu Prefecture and that he was at the temple there, preaching. So, the ward checked. Somebody rang that temple. There was no trace of him there, and the brother in Gifu had been dead for years. There is one more piece of paperwork from those years that I find harder to look at than the pension. The Tokyo Metropolitan Government, acting on a request from the national government, had written to its oldest residents asking whether they consented to having their names published. The Kato household replied on his behalf. They said he did not wish to be named. At some point, the family also told police that he was a human vegetable and could not get up. On the 15th of July, the ward telephoned the grandson, who was 49. He told them his mother and his elder sister handled all of this and that he had nothing to do with it. On the 14th of May, the ward formally asked Senju Police Station for help, which is a significant thing for a local authority to do about one of its own residents. By June, it was telling the police, in writing, that it could not confirm whether the man was actually alive. On the 21st of July, an official went to the house. Nobody answered. On the 22nd, he went again. Nobody answered. And there is one more thing from that period that I keep turning over. At some stage, the ward asked the family for a photograph because they wanted to feature their oldest resident in the ward newsletter. The family refused. An official asked whether he might be allowed just one glimpse of him, just one look. That was refused too. Then comes the evening of the 26th of July and the hour in the hallway. Officers from Senju Police Station, staff from the ward, and an official from the Mutual Aid Association that was paying the pension all went to the house together. For about an hour, 3 members of that family stood in the entrance hall and refused to let them past. He is asleep on the 2nd floor, they said. He does not want to see anyone. We cannot let you meet him. And they added that he had not been ill in decades. He was not on the 2nd floor. He was on the ground floor, on the other side of the wall they were standing against, and he had been dead for 32 years. Before the last part of this, do me one quick favor and tap the like button. I am still getting this channel off the ground, and it helps more than you would think. Because 2 mornings later, somebody in that family walked into a police station on her own. On the morning of the 28th of July, 2010, the granddaughter, aged 53, came into Senju Police Station and told officers that her grandfather had shut himself in the ground floor room some 30 years earlier to become a living Buddha, that he had been a strict man, and that nobody had been able to go into the room. That afternoon, the officers went to the house and opened the door. Dust across the floor. No footprints. Nothing disturbed. A bed against the far wall. A blanket. A man lying face up in his underwear and undershirts, mummified, with parts of him down to bare bone. The autopsy found no notable injuries on the outside of the body. It could not determine a cause of death, and it could not determine a time of death. So, the November 1978 date does not come from a pathologist. It comes from a newspaper on the floor. So, the living Buddha. That story appeared for the first time on the morning of the 28th of July, 2010. It had not been offered in January, or in February, or in June. What had been offered in those months was that he was asleep, and then that he was in Gifu preaching at a temple, and then that he was unable to move. 3 explanations, mutually incompatible, and then a 4th one that arrived only when a body was about to be found. A Japanese television program built a full-size replica of the house and that room, to police specifications, right down to sourcing newspapers from 1978. And the thing they pointed out is quietly devastating. There were no religious books in the room. None. The granddaughter also told police that in March of 2010, she had looked into the room and seen her grandfather's skull. That was 4 months before she walked into the station. In those 4 months, the ward came to the door repeatedly, and the family said he was asleep. On the 27th of August, 2010, the police arrested the daughter, Michiko, who was 81, and the granddaughter, Tokumi, who was 53. The charge was fraud, and fraud was the only thing on the sheet. Nothing could be charged over the body. In Japan, the time limit for abandoning a corpse is 3 years. For abandonment by a person responsible for care resulting in death, it is 5. Both had run out decades before anyone opened that door. The fraud charge covered about 9,150,000 yen, roughly $105,000, taken across 35 separate payments. Both women admitted it. The daughter told police she had made her already dead father look alive and had taken the pension. Between the 15th and the 23rd of July, in the days when the ward kept knocking, 2,700,000 yen came out of that account in 6 withdrawals. That is about $31,000, and some of it went straight into a safe deposit box. In November, the granddaughter was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months, suspended for 4 years. The court called it malicious, said she had been in a subordinate position to her mother, and noted that she had come to the police station of her own accord. Her mother never stood trial. Michiko Kato died in custody on the 21st of January 2011, 12 days before her first hearing, and the court formally dismissed the prosecution. And then Japan went looking for everybody else. The Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare ordered a national check on people aged 100 and over. By the 27th of August, the count of centenarians who could not be located was 271. More returns came in. By February 2011, it was 584. Osaka alone could not account for 129 of its centenarians. Hyogo could not account for 124, which was 1 in every 15. For scale, Japan had about 44,000 confirmed living centenarians that September. So this is not most of them. It is a few hundred out of tens of thousands, and that is exactly why nobody had ever thought to look. Then the Ministry of Justice went into the family registers, and that is where it stops being a scandal and starts being something stranger. The family register, the koseki, is the deepest layer of Japanese identity paperwork. Between the 27th of August and the 6th of September, officials checked 47 million of them, which was 90% of the country. They found 234,354 people listed as aged 100 or over, alive with no address recorded. 77,000 of them would have been 120 or older. 884 of them would have been over 150. In Nagasaki, they found a register for somebody who would have been 200 years old. That number needs handling with care because English reporting has mangled it badly. Those 200,000 people are not missing pensioners. They are paperwork, mostly from the war years and the emigration era, people who left or died in circumstances where nobody ever filed the form. The number of people actually missing off the resident register was 271, then 584. That is the real figure. But the paper number tells you something the real one does not. It tells you that Japan had never once gone back to look. And then there were the individual cases that came out over that summer, which are the ones that got under my skin. In early August, Tokyo's oldest woman, aged 113, could not be found. Her resident record sat at her daughter's flat in Suganami Ward, an address she had never lived at. The last documented contact between them was in 1977 when she visited her daughter's workplace. Her daughter had gone on paying her taxes, her long-term care premiums, and her health insurance for over 30 years. On the 1st of September, in Izumi City in Osaka, they found a man of 91 in a wardrobe in the house he shared with his daughter, wrapped in a plastic bag. He had been dead about 6 years. His pension had been arriving every 2 months, and she had been living on it. And here is the one that should have stopped all of it before it started. In March 2005, in Atami in Hyogo Prefecture, a man recorded as 107 years old, the oldest man in the prefecture, was found mummified in his own futon. He had been drawing about 400,000 yen a year. That was 5 years earlier. It was reported as a local story. Nobody went and checked the rest of the country because nothing about it looked like a national question at the time. What actually changed afterwards was small and administrative and honestly quite sensible. The Ministry of Justice ruled that a family register showing somebody 120 or older with no address could simply be deleted by officials. The Health Ministry started cross-referencing pension records against people over 76 who had used no medical care for a whole year and sent them a form. 341,000 of those went out in November 2010. When the results came back, 2,239 of those people were already dead, and there were 577 whose families could not say where they were. Japan even got a phrase out of it. They started saying na bakari koreisha, which means elderly in name only. Online, people were harder about it and called them the non-existent elderly. There is one sentence I have been circling since I started reading about this, and it has nothing to do with the family. The system did not fail to notice that Sogen Kato was dead. It never had any way of noticing that he was alive. It only had a way of noticing when somebody chose to say he was not. For 32 years, the state of Japan held him in its records as a living man, paid him, wrote to him, congratulated him by post, ranked him as the oldest person in his ward, and asked him whether he consented to having his name published. And every one of those actions was a machine talking to an empty room with dust on the floor. There is one man in this story who stays with me, and he was never inside that house. He is the ward official who stood at the door and asked the family whether he could be allowed just one glimpse of the old man. One look. That was all he wanted. And they said no, and he went away because he had no power to do anything else. He said afterwards that it never occurred to him there would be a body in the house. And the paper ghosts did not all get cleared up either. A newspaper study of the official gazette found that among the people declared legally missing for inheritance purposes in the 2021 financial year, 50 of them would have been 120 or older. The oldest would have been 149. So how many people do you think a country can hold on its books before it notices that nobody has actually seen them? If there is a door like that somewhere near you, tell me about it below.